Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning and welcome back to the lecture series on Partition of India in Print, Media and Cinema. We are discussing Refugee, Desh and Nation. We have already discussed the journey of the refugee in becoming the citizen and how problematic, how dual and nuanced the identity of the refugee citizen is. So, we have also discussed regarding the Bengali refugees process of resettlement outside of Bengal. So, for the Bengali refugees, the government had devised policies to resettle them. The Dalit refugees, especially the Dalit refugees, were encouraged to resettle first in Andaman and then in the Dandakaranya. And we see a lot of resistance coming from among the refugees who would not like to go and start a new life, start life afresh in an arid land such as Dandakaranya. Even Andaman was considered as a place far away from Bengal, and so the Dalit refugees, the Bengali refugees actually wanted to stay back in West Bengal in India. But we see that the government's policies have caste and class coloration, and this is something we notice both in the case of the Congress government in Bengal, in West Bengal, as well as the Communist Party that came afterwards in 1977. So, we were discussing how a mythical lens is adopted in looking at the government policies. For most of the Dalit refugees that came in the tail end of the tail end of the migration process, they were part of the third wave of migration. They would look at the policy of resettlement in Andaman and then in Dandakaranya through a mytho-historical lens. So, they in the common parlance, the Dalit refugee would, the Bengali Dalit refugee would say that because they did not have much socio-cultural economic capital, they were being exiled to the Kalapani. So, Andaman had its own history where all the prisoners would be sent, and so they mourned that they even after the country got its independence, the poorer sections, their lives did not matter. They were being sent forced to go and settle in Kalapani, which was Andaman, popularly known as. And then Dandakaranya was the land where we see in Ramayana Ram is exiled. During his exile, Ram goes and lives in Dandakaranya. So, that is another impression that popularly harbored in the minds of the Dalit Bengali refugees, that they are being banished to the Dandakaranya. So resettlement becomes synonymous with punishment. This is something I was trying to get at. Now, we see Shaktipada Rajguru's seminal work Dondok Theke Mori Jhapi. Shaktipada Rajguru's work Dondok Theke Mori Jhapi, it encompasses the significant aspects of the Dandakaranya project. So, the fact that the larger plan did not take into account the ground realities. I was talking about the fiasco happened the fiasco was the result of a lack of communication, miscommunication between West Bengal state government and Madhya Pradesh government, as well as the Dandakaranya Development Authority. So, there was this gap between how the plan was chalked out and how it was implemented. Even some ground realities were not taken into considerations, and these gaps, these fallacies, setbacks have been they have been depicted very explicitly in Rajguru's work. So, the resettlement plan, for example, expected the Dalit refugee settlers to the Dalit refugee settlers to clear forests. So, it was a laborious task to clear forests and then to cultivate harvest crops in an arid, semi-arid land. And then they were expected to build schools, roads, hospitals. Basically, they would have to set up a new civilization and then start living there. Nothing was given to them a priori. And so, there was also this question of colonizing the lands, the question of colonizing the lands of the tribal people. These lands of forests used to belong originally to the tribals, and so there was this potential conflict between the new arrivals, the Bengalis, and the local populace, a peasant tribal confrontation over the land issue. And the novel deals with, the novel describes this simmering discontent. So, when we talk of refugee rehabilitation, the chapter of Morichapi until a long time remained under discussed, under researched, something that no one would mention. It was almost a forgotten chapter. People, very few people wrote and discussed about it. A reason why it was so could be that the lives at stake were those of the Dalit people. Had it been the loss of the elites, the upper class and upper caste people, this would have been an over discussed, over researched issue. It's a curious and an intriguing observation that research on Morichapi is coming up. People have started talking about this forgotten, hitherto forgotten chapter of history only as late as maybe some 10-15 years after the new century started. So it's as late as well into 21st century, we could say, after 2010 and 11, after the communist regime was toppled by Trinamool Congress in West Bengal, that people have actually at least started mentioning and accepting that so many Dalit people were massacred during this issue, during this event. So, what was at stake, like I was saying, are the lives and the property of the Dalits, the untouchables. And so, policies were shaped both by the center, the government at the center, and by the West Bengal government, the urban middle class of Calcutta, in such a way that a paltry sum, almost nothing, not paltry sum, let us say almost a very insignificant share was doled out to the Dalits, which amounted to almost nothing. And so there was basically there was a lack of sympathy for this section of people that migrated as late as in the 1970s, in the 1980s. We have seen how migration happened in Bengal in a sporadic, spasmodic manner in different junctures of history. So, different turns of events provoked communal riots, and that instigated a fresh exodus of the Hindu refugees from East Pakistan, and then after 1971 from Bangladesh. So even after the communist government came to power in West Bengal, the status quo was maintained. In 1977, the Left Front government came into power, and the refugees who had been living in Dandakaranya with a sense of discontent were actually hopeful that with the new government they should be brought back to West Bengal, basically given some land to resettle in West Bengal. So they were hopeful that the new government would embrace some of their demands, some of the Dalit refugee cause, and they would rehabilitate the Bengali refugees, the Dalit Bengali refugees in West Bengal. So this also has its own history, why the refugees hoped, why the refugees were optimistic about the communist government. During the implementation and failure of the Dandakaranya project in a large way, in a major way, it could be seen as a failure or a fiasco. And that's when the leftist opposition leaders at that time, leaders such as Jyoti Basu, Kiranmoy Nanda, Ram Chatterjee, and the Refugee Development Association's president Satish Mandal, all these opposition leaders were actually fanning sentiments against the ruling Congress government, and they were promising to resettle the poor Dalit refugees back in the Bengal. They would give the Sundarban areas of West Bengal to the Dalit refugees if they came to power. Contrarily, when the Dalits actually they succeeded in occupying, when they actually succeeded in occupying the Marijhapi area, the Communist Party, which had by then formed its government in West Bengal, betrayed its pro-proletarian or pro-peasant position, pro-refugee position, and they started uprooting the Dalit refugees. We see also that left front ministers such as Ram Chatterjee visiting the refugee camps at Dandak, and he has been widely reported as encouraging the refugees to come and settle in the Sundarbans. So this was an agenda of the left as an opposition party. So when the left used to be an opposition in Bengal, the question or the question of Dalit refugees resettlement in West Bengal was strongly, vociferously taken up by these leaders in the forefront, but they as the popular version goes, they had become turncoat later on. So so the left front policies had changed under altered circumstances when they had a government of their own. The new left front government came to power. Ironically, they came to power with a large number of refugee votes, and they urged the same refugees, especially from the lower rungs, to go back to Dandakaranya and refuse to entertain their demand of settling in West Bengal. So here we see the left government's self-perpetuation and reproduction of power being accomplished necessary through violence, and it also reveals it reveals their partisan stance, their basic bias towards the upper class and the upper caste people. Their upper caste conservative attitudes become obvious. We see, for example, Jyoti Basu's speech being circulated as leaflets by the government of West Bengal. It would be titled Dandakaranya theke phire asha udbastuder proti Mukhyamantrir Abedon, or Chief Minister's petition to the Dandakaranya returnee refugees, and dated April 11, 1978, and it basically requested the refugees that had returned from Dandakaranya, hoping to get some land in Sundarbans, to retrace to the Malkangiri areas, and promising them that those areas would be developed in the near future. What was implicit in this promise is that those areas would be developed through the labor of through exploiting the labor, free labor of the Dalit refugees. So around 10,000 Namasudra refugee families under the leadership of Satish Mandal, who was the president of Udbastu Unnanshil Samiti, had set sail and settled in Morichapi. So the government declared Morichapi as a reserve forest area which could not be used for human habitation, and so refugees occupying such areas were seen as tantamount to violating the forest acts through destroying the existing and potential forest wealth and creating ecological imbalance. We have testimonials by Dalit refugees who later on wrote their own books. Writers such as Nirmal Kanti Dhali and Radhika Ranjan Biswas, who attest to the brutality instigated by the communist government subsequently through encouraging the police force to carry out random massacres of Dalits and sabotage their lives and property. So the government at that time was falsely indicting the Dalits with offences like collusion with foreign spies, firearm training activities, smuggling of national treasure, and destruction of conserved forest property. So there were many families that had sold their belongings and started journeying for Sundarbans after quitting their homes in Dandakaranya. So between March and April, we see this large, huge exodus from Dandakaranya, a significant population of Dalit refugees making a move to settle in Sundarbans between March and April 1978. And one such person has been recorded as saying, this is a 55-year-old Ratish Mondal, who left for Morichapi to begin a new life, and he says, how many days did we eat a full meal in Dondok? We spent 20 years like that. Can't we manage 3 months more? But I am no longer a refugee. My Bastuhara title is at an end. So there is this acute sentiment informing the refugees returning to West Bengal. They would have the sentiment that informed and that created this impetus, this demand for resettlement in Bengal, is that once a Bengali lives in Bengal, he is no longer or she is no longer tagged as Bastuhara. So a term like refugee, like Bastuhara, have their own sense of the weight of taboo that they carry is undeniable, and this is something a lot of refugees were struggling to come out of. And so what instigated, what motivated migration is the fact that one would be able to shed such a taboo title or a taboo, one would not be seen under such a taboo social marker. So yet one observes that leaders from the Revolutionary Socialist Party RSP, which is a Marxist-Leninist faction of the left wing, and who proclaimed that the Morichapi area belonged to them, would ominously patrol the area. They would incoming refugees under surveillance. On 26 January 1979, so the government sponsored goons enacted absolute economic and food blockade on the island to force the settlers to go back. So the police launches surrounded the island. the refugees were tear gassed, their huts, their tube wells, fisheries, their equipments were basically demolished. Those who tried to cross the river in makeshift boats were shot at. So, refugees were plainly armed with carpentry tools, makeshift bows and arrows, and so they were no match for the government forces that were using guns and ammunition. So, the community, so we see that there was this conscious attempt to deprive the refugees of food and water, and many died of starvation, some died of police firing, and a conservative estimate would give the number of dead men, women and children to be somewhere close to about several hundred. It is also understood, it is also claimed that the dead bodies of the people that were shot at would be thrown into the river. Now, a few months after the incident, 3-member committee was formed, including ministers like Prasannabhai Mehta, Lakshminarayan Pandey and Mangaldev Visharad, who visited the Madhijhap area for inspection on March 22, 1979, and however, they learned from the West Bengal government that the deaths were mainly caused due to starvation and dearth of medication. So, a report is prepared based on what this committee learns from Bengal, from the agents of the government. And so, a report is produced to Prime Minister Morarji Desai in the 1980s, stating that nothing problematic was observed about the Madhijhap incident. So, there were no problematic remarks about the Madhijhap incident, and the centre relied on the West Bengal government, the left government's management, and refrained from taking any strong decision. So, basically the entire chapter of violence was relegated, it was kind of sent back, it was relegated to an oblivion. Further, we see collusion of the government with a major popular newspapers like the Statesman, both in English and in Bengali, which is said to have taken up the role of allaying the charges. Statesman would claim that the government was not to be blamed. So, the entire incident of Madhijhap confirms the ultimate Bhadralok orientation, ultimate elitist orientation and conservative standpoint of the reigning Communist Party in Bengal, in West Bengal. So, correspondents citing in the context of the Madhijhap incident would also argue that the communist government was disadvantaging the Dalit Bengali refugees at the expense of fulfilling its other ambitions. So, it had the ambition, for example, of winning the West Bengali Muslims votes, and then it targeted a peaceable relation with peaceable relations with the abutting states. So, it would accommodate working classes that migrated every year to Calcutta, working classes that were originally from Odisha, from Bihar and from Uttar Pradesh, in a bid to do so, as a way of accommodating the labours from adjacent states and winning the Muslim votes. The government was neglecting the needs, the demands of the Dalit Bengali refugees. And this is despite the fact, as some of the Dalit refugee leaders intellectuals and writers later on state. This is despite the fact that the Dalit sections had traditionally lent support to the leaders that they call as the leftist fugitives. They had constantly supplied man force to the party's early barricades and civil disobediences, such as the All Bengal Teachers Association movement, the All Bengal Teachers Association movement in 1954, and the anti-merger movement in 1956, as well as a series of food movements. So, this is an extended quote that I have translated. This is originally in Bengali, written by Manoranjan Bepari, that debunks the caste class politics of the different governments in West Bengal, both the Congress and the Communist Party. So, Bepari says, the Bengal that had space available for Bhadralok refugees, where lakhs of people entered from other regions every year and got put up, where lakhs of acres of demesne were under the government's hold, could not dole out one kattha of land to these people even then, even now. In August 11, 1958, the UCRC, meaning United Central Refugee Council, which was a collaborated organization formed by the Communist Party and the Forward Bloc, had petitioned before Chief Minister Dr. Bidhan Chandra Ray to develop 62.5 square mile areas of the Sundarban lands and rehabilitate 6,875, that is a little less than around 7, let us say, to rehabilitate around 7,000 refugee families there, as well as re-establish jobs for 3,300 families based on the fish bheris in 12,000 acres of lands. At a later stage, the Chief Minister himself had asserted that the government had about 5,000 bighas of land in Morijjapi under the Sandeshkhali police station, but those lands could not be entitled to these people, because they were not the Chatterjee Mukherjee Banerjees or the Ghosh Bose Guha Mitras, towards whom the leaders were ever sympathetic. These were the Biswas Bepari Mandal Bala Mistris, Dalits, Chotoloks. So, this is a quotation from Bepari's work, Anantaratri Chandal, an essay that he has written. And we are coming back to the moot point, which is that the Indian government had similarly treated its refugees depending on their class caste background. As they came at different phases of migration, policies designed and implemented would also change. The government gave separate designation for each group depending on their phase of arrival in India. So, scholars such as Archit Basu Guha Chaudhary, Ian Talbot, Gurharpal Singh note the periodic and a staggering nature of displacement from eastern, from East Pakistan or Bangladesh to the eastern India, where this kept happening, the migration kept happening, infiltration kept happening long after partition. While there is a major difference, like many critics observe, there is a major difference in handling the Punjab and Bengal partition. In the former case, in the case of Punjab, there was a mutual agreement of virtual exchange of population, and it happened in a more organized fashion and almost at once. And the center took measures to limit, whereas in the case of Bengal, the center took measures to limit the transfer of population, and so it kept happening in different decades under different circumstances and in different contexts. So, a researcher such as Anushwa Basu Ray Chaudhary notes that migration among East Bengalis to West Bengal was primarily shaped by three basic imperatives. One was dhan or property, maan or prestige, and pran, which or life. So, one understands that the terminology or the expression for this social marker refugee also changes post 1971 war. So, the watershed of 1971 actually signaled a change in the attitude of the Indian people towards the refugees coming from the eastern side, coming from Bangladesh. So, the era of citizen refugee had ended, and unlike the predecessors, the post 1971 migrants from Hindu and Buddhist communities, these minorities that migrated to India from Pakistan after March 1971 were not treated as putative citizens. The question of offering them citizenship was not considered. They were rather seen as marked as foreigners and identified as temporary sojourners that were coming to India only to go back. It was expected that after some time they would go back. So, later migrants from Bangladesh came to be characterized with this particular term Anuprabishkari or infiltrators in West Bengal, and they were seen in the common parlance, although it was not a part of the official language. In the common parlance, there were other words such as leech, people that had parasitic relation with the host land, and then defectors or traitors, people that were let us say so defectors, traitors, and the question of espionage, the charge of espionage was heavily hurled at these refugees that were coming in the later phase. So, the transformation of the citizen refugee to the Bangladeshi infiltrator had, however, not happened suddenly. When was it exactly that the citizen refugee, someone that had prospects of being assimilated, being included and made a part of Indian citizenry, suddenly change from the traditional words such as migrants. So there was this sudden transformation from the terms such as migrants, refugees, displaced persons that were being used since 1947 to terms such as spies, defectors, traitors, infiltrators, leeches, parasites and so forth. And it was not a sudden affair. We can't say that the outlook changed all of a sudden. So, so we see that for the latter, for the Anuprabishkari, the post 1971 populace, there was no question of being assimilated, of being integrated into into the process of becoming an Indian citizen, the question of being transformed and included as part of citizenry, that was not being considered anymore. So, they were marked and permanently marked as outsiders who were required to return. And the regime of rehabilitation in West Bengal was not merely a result of contestation between the West Bengal government and the East Bengal refugees. So, the policies that churned out, that came up were not happening only as a result of a dialogue between the East Bengali refugees and the West Bengal government. The government of India tacitly played a role, a crucial role in the evolution of such policies. And so, the West Bengal success in adopting policies, for example, that were explicitly caste class biased would be possible only through active support from the government at the center. So, the self-reliant refugees appeal to the state for recognition of their social eminence, their contribution to the state making process, and so it's a paradox that the policy of self-rehabilitation, which should have concentrated and considered more the case of the people that actually needed the state's help, went on to reward, lionize and celebrate the image of the image of image of a posh section, an elite section which could manage on their own, which had enough and even surplus. And so the refugees' image, like I will discuss in my subsequent lecture, the refugees' image, ironically it was shaped through the picture that was presented by this upper cream section people, and they were being rewarded, they were being celebrated and lionized. The policy of state rehabilitation paradoxically tended to reward these sections of immigrants that did not need anything from the state. They were being lionized, they were being celebrated for their resilience, for their able to fight back and rebound, rather than actually supporting those that were in need, in real need of the state help. And so, those that were left on the margins of the new citizenry symbolize the state's failure to accommodate, to design policies that could accommodate the subaltern, the ones at the very bottom of the ladder. So, we are going to continue our discussion on this topic, but in our next class. Thank you.